Before the Qing conquered China, before they ruled the country from the Forbidden City, it all started here in Shenyang. I am here at Beiling Park,
home of the Zhaoling tomb,
where the founding emperor of the Qing Dynasty, Huang Taiji, rests. But before we talk about him, we gotta talk about his father, Nurhaci. Let's go. So Nurhaci was born in 1559 when this region was still part of the Ming frontier. And he started off as this sort of local chieftain, but through war, alliance, and sheer will, he united dozens of Jurchen tribes under his command. And in 1616, he declared himself a Khan and founded what he called the later Qing Dynasty, named after the old Jurchen Dynasty from the 12th century. So it was like a signal of his ambition to restore Jurchen glory. It was under this context that Nurhaci built the 8-banner system, which was not just an army, but an entire social order that transformed tribal warriors into an empire to be. When Nurhaci died in 1626, his 8th son, Huang Taiji, took command and consolidated what he had built. He restructured the government, recruited Han officials, and then in 1636, right here in Shenyang, he renamed the later Jin, the Jin, into the Qing, the Great Qing. What was once a federation of tribes was on its way to becoming an imperial state. So as you can see, Beiling Park is a place where many residents of Shenyang like to come and pass their time. Now today is a work day, so a lot of the people you'll be seeing are retirees. But on weekends, you'll see many young people as well. The very first time I came here was in 2019, and it was back in December when it was a lot colder than it is today. The lakes were frozen, and you could see many young people ice skating. You'll find that in China and in many other socialist countries like the DPRK, trees tend to be painted white on the bottom. If you know what it is and why they do that, drop a comment. If you're right, you might get a prize. Now we're walking towards the tomb of Huang Taiji. And I really like Shenyang because although it is not a very well-known place in the West, it is a place where a lot of interesting and consequential history of China has occurred, such as the founding of the Qing Dynasty, which was the final dynasty and also the biggest dynasty by area. And then there was the 14 years of anti-Japanese resistance, which began in the Northeast, began in Shenyang, starting with the Mukden incident back in 1931, September 18th. It's called the Mukden incident because that was I believe, the Manchurian name of Shenyang back then. And then there's also quite a bit of Korean War history as well, believe it or not. It's where the martyrs of the Korean War are buried. Some of the very well-known ones like Qiu Shaoyun, and I'll be showing that to you in a later episode. Yeah. Then there's also the fact that I actually have family history in Shenyang as well. You'll find that a lot of Han people in the Northeast have their roots in Shandong. When the Qing Dynasty was first founded, Han people were actually banned from coming to this area of China because the Manchurians wanted to ensure that they had their little home base for themselves in case, things went south and they needed a place to retreat. Now, when my grandfather was young, he was born in the final year of the Qing Dynasty, by the way, 1910. Final full year, the Qing Dynasty fell in 1911. He came from Shandong, which was a very poor province. So he and his older brother became child laborers in the capital of Shandong, Jinan. And after they completed their apprenticeship and learned carpentry, they came over here to the Northeast to find work as migrant workers. And then from there, they ended up going south to Korea because they heard there were more work opportunities over there. Then things got complicated over there. Life was very hard for Chinese people back then. And a fellow Chinese migrant worker was bullied and harassed by Korean gangsters with the backing of the Imperial Japanese. So my grandfather, as a representative of the Overseas Chinese Association over there in Korea, came out and tried to seek justice. And what ended up happening was those gangsters wanted him dead. So he escaped from Jurchen, which is in modern day North Korea, where there were very few Chinese people, into the Seoul Incheon area where there were more Chinese people, so he could blend in and lay low. And he wasn't safe until 1945 when the Japanese were expelled. And then by then, Korea was partitioned. Now, his older brother stayed in what was North Korea. And then in 1950, when the Korean War broke out, he and his family went into hiding up in the mountains. They thought that the war would end in just a few months, but then it kept on dragging on. And then by the end of the year, the Chinese People's Volunteers found them in hiding up in the mountains and told them, hey, you guys really need to go back to China. Our country's been liberated. The feudal landlords are gone now. And yeah, they ended up escaping Korea on foot, dodging US air raids, and they ended up settling over here in Shenyang. So we have now arrived at Zhaoling Tomb in Beiling Park, which is the final resting place of Huang Taiji. Let's go. It's at the back of Beiling Park, and it costs 40 RMB as of the time of this recording to enter. So the main entrance costs 5 RMB, and the back area over here costs 40. So 45, it's still less than 10 US dollars. So this is called the Warm Pavilion, and it was modeled after the bed that he slept on when he was alive. And they continued to maintain it even after his death as a symbol of his spirit continuing to live on as the Qing Empire continued to exist. Now, this is the West Hall of Beiling, where lamas would recite sutras when important sacrifices took place. Now we're gonna keep on heading to the back, where we should see the actual tomb of Huang Taiji. This is the Longen Hall, built in 1643, and it's where important ceremonies honoring the Emperor Huang Taiji took place. So the stone tablet, it says, 太宗文皇帝之陵, the tomb of Emperor Taizongwen, which was another name of Huang Taiji. And then it's also written in Manchurian as well as Mongolian. I know some people might be wondering why there's Mongolian inscriptions on some of these tablets when the Qing were Manchus. And the answer is because when Nurhaci first found the later Jin, he was contending with the Mongols, who during the Ming Dynasty formed their own little rump state in what is now Mongolia, Inner Mongolia, and surrounding areas. And when Huang Taiji took over, he continued the policy of fighting them. Now, early on, the southern Mongols were allied with the Ming, but after Huang Taiji defeated Ojai Khan, they became military allies with the Qing, and it was with this sort of military alliance and their integration into the Eight Banner system that the Qing were finally able to enter Beijing and defeat the Ming. See that big ass mountain behind me with the tree growing out of it, that is the final resting place of Huang Taiji. You might be wondering why the mound is so big when Huang Taiji was just a person. And the thing is, it's not just a single emperor that's buried there. He's also buried essentially with a treasure palace where a bunch of his treasures are buried. So underneath that, there is essentially this huge palace underground. Yeah, so to all of the Baizuo out in America attending their little No Kings clown show, it's also no kings over here in China. We got emperors. Kings are for our vassals. I was told by some that I should consider becoming a food vlogger. And after walking around Beiling Park all morning, I'm actually getting a little bit hungry, so let's go get some food. So I've been craving a dish called guobao rou, which is fitting for today's episode because this dish originated during the late Qing Dynasty in Harbin, which is one of the northernmost cities of the Chinese Northeast. And because Harbin's near Russia, they have a lot of Russians over there. And apparently this kind of similar to sweet and sour pork dish was adapted to fit the palate of some of these Russians. So we'll see what it's like in a bit. 好，谢谢。 Got this fried rice and these stewed vegetables. First taste. Yo, you hear the crunch? So crunchy on the outside and very juicy on the inside. So the name of that restaurant was Sifang Guobao Rou, or as Northeasterners call it, Guobao You. Yeah, I hit the spot, but if you plan on coming to a place like this, definitely bring a friend because one person, it's a bit of a struggle, to be honest. Yeah, gonna need to walk all of that off now. Now we're gonna head over to the Imperial Palace here in Shenyang to check out where Nurhaci and Huang Taiji ran their government. This is the Imperial Palace of Shenyang, whose construction began in 1625 under the orders of Nurhaci, who used this place as his command center, and it continued to be the capital of the Qing Dynasty under Huang Taiji until the Forbidden City was taken over by the Qing. This hall behind me is called the Chongzheng Dian, the Chongzheng Hall, which is where Huang Taiji met to discuss state affairs and also meet foreign envoys. When the Qing took over the Forbidden City, this became a place where Qing officials would come and pay respects to their ancestors. So behind me is the Dazheng Dian, the Dazheng Hall, which is the first building of this complex, built all the way back in 1625 under the orders of Nurhaci. This was kind of like his headquarters where he met with the 8 banners and discussed military affairs. Later on, Huang Taiji expanded it, adding Han-style courtyards and Buddha shrines. So you can see the blend of cultures over here. It's kind of like a preview of how the Qing would later run a multi-ethnic empire. So from this very hall, Nurhaci and Huang Taiji directed the armies that would one day bring down the Ming Dynasty and cement the Qing as its rightful successors. By the time the Ming fell to the Qing were already battle-hardened. Their troops mustered right over here in Shenyang, marched through the Sanhai Pass, and the rest is history. So does the octagonal design of this building remind you of anything? It's meant to be modeled somewhat after the Mongolian yurts. So even as the Manchus built their palaces, they never really forgot their nomadic roots. So over there is the Dazheng Hall, and in front of it is the courtyard with little huts on either side. There's a total of 10 huts, with 8 of them belonging to each of the 8 banners, and then the additional 2 are for the dukes. And this is where the Eight Banner Army would meet with the Qing Emperor before the Qing Dynasty relocated to Beijing. Of course, the bannermen aren't a thing anymore, so these huts today are used as a place to tell the stories of the early Qing Empire with historical relics and artifacts on display. So even though Huang Taiji was the first emperor of the Qing Dynasty, it's so trippy to think about how he never actually set foot in Beijing, and it was actually his son that completed the task of overthrowing the Ming and moving the Qing Dynasty to Beijing. I want to take a moment to thank everyone who made this next phase of Straight Talk possible. In addition to the regular podcast episodes, I'll now be uploading vlogs, going on location across both sides of the Taiwan Strait to not just talk about Chinese history, but to show it. Whether you're a patron, a subscriber, a channel member, or someone who made a donation to help kickstart this new chapter, you've made a real difference. And I'll do my best to keep raising the bar and bringing you better stories straight from the source. Every dynasty has its origin story, and in the case of the Qing, it happened right here in Shenyang.